Now,
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:36 now on O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in here to News Talk 105.9 WMAL. Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock.
Good morning.
Good morning, Julie. I don't know. I was feeling very radio DJ just now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL. Your place for all the news and talk that you're looking for here in the DMV. What the hell is wrong with me? Coming up at 8:05, Dr. Robert Malone is going to speak some basic common sense to this seeming march toward pandemic lockdown 2.0. And then at 8:35, Luke Rosiak's got some news out of Loudoun County with regard to your Loudoun Love Warriors. But let's keep it in Loudoun County now for a little tete-a-tete with Gary Katz. He's the Republican candidate for chairman at large for the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors. And boy, Gary Katz, they had quite a meeting last night where I almost get the feeling that Phyllis Randall is indignant that we're not thanking her for using thousands of dollars of tax dollars to go on her little pleasure trip to Ghana and Uganda. Or Uruguay, excuse me.
Yeah, that's right, Larry. It really seems like there's a lot of disinformation floating about that. And frankly, I think it's a bit disingenuous to dismiss the very real concerns that have surfaced about the purpose of these trips, the lavishness and the extravagance of these trips, and frankly, the return on the investment, which there seems to be, as far as we can tell, zero return, despite some numbers that are being thrown out there, which we can't even trace down. This is insulting our sense of decency. It's insulting our intelligence because we see what they're doing, and yet they are still being evasive. They are still not being truthful, and it is time for a change. So
a part of your interest in running for this seat as the Republican on the ticket now is to restore faith in government. So how do you do that? Because I think that the citizens of Loudoun County are rather skeptical of their elected representatives at the county level.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the problem. That's why I stood up, Larry, because we're at a point where we just don't believe what any of our elected representatives are saying. There's always spin. It's always some story that's being spun around. Honesty matters. Integrity matters. Trust matters. Accountability and transparency, they actually matter. They're not just platitudes. And when you get to the point where you can't stomach it anymore and you look down, what's coming, you say, well, there's either going to be an election that's uncontested effectively, which is going to coast into a third term, or you have to stand up and do it yourself. That's the position that I'm in. I'm doing it because I believe that government needs to lead by example, that people should be able to go and look at their leaders and believe them when they talk. Because like many others here, I'm looking at my elected leadership saying, I don't think I can believe any of them. So absent them rising up, I'm standing up and I'll be that leader.
You've talked about being a political newcomer. Why do you think that that's sort of key to attracting voters to you as a candidate?
That's a great question. I do not aspire to power. I'm not looking to go and climb the political ladder. What I want to do is the right thing for our community. I want people to have faith in that the right things are being done by responsible adults who just care about our community, who care about taking care of it. I've actually been involved in our community behind the scenes on other issues and other dialogues just to do the right thing, not to aspire up to some level of, political power. We should have people who put the people first, wanting, to be in power rather, as opposed to people who want to be in power, being in power. I want to serve the people of Loudoun, to be a servant leader, to get the work of the county done so that people can have faith that the right things are being done by serious-minded people who genuinely just want to do the right thing, not some, ulterior motive.
One thing that caught my attention too is, and I honestly think this is so unusual for our public officials these days, is you're actually encouraging people, members of the public, to pay attention. You're telling them to attend the board meetings, to speak up. I feel like that's so rare today in politics, where a lot of these officials, elected officials, rely on people being silent. That's a very refreshing message for voters, Mr. Katz.
I appreciate that, and I believe that strongly. I think that when people aren't paying attention, things are done, and when no one's looking, that actually fosters an environment where things can be done that shouldn't be done.
Yeah.
I want people to pay attention. I want them to be civically engaged. I want them to care about the community, not just the social issues that make the headlines. I want them to pay attention to perhaps the less interesting details that are equally, if not more important to how this county functions.
Well, and of course, all of our listeners know that we're so plugged in on these local races this November all across the Commonwealth of Virginia. They might be confused, like, wait a minute, I thought Stephen Carbelk was running as a Republican nominee for this seat. He dropped out because of health concerns. His mother-in-law has serious health concerns, and he and his family are going to be in South Carolina basically during this entire election season. So as a good man of integrity, he stepped down because he knew he couldn't put all of his energies in. Republican Party of Loudoun County has selected you, Mr. Katz, to be the nominee now, as per the appropriate rules of the nominating process. So first of all, I want to thank you for stepping up because, we've seen way too many people sort of shy away from entering the fray, and things can get nasty out there in Loudoun County. Are you prepared for that? Are you prepared to get into some trench warfare? Because we've seen over the last several years, the Democrats do not play nice out there.
Yeah, I have very thick skin, Larry. I'm not concerned about that. At the end of the day, this is for everyone else. This is not for me. And if I need to take slings and arrows in order to go and do that, then folks will find that I'm a pretty resilient person. So I'm not concerned about that. Loudoun deserves better. Loudoun deserves a choice. Mr. Carbelk was a wonderful candidate, but he had a family emergency, and absent his being in the race, it was either let Phyllis Randall coast into a third term or stand up and give Loudoun a choice. I choose the latter.
So Phyllis Randall, in her wisdom, she believes at the same time it's okay for her to spend tax dollars for junkets, 5-star luxury locations in Uruguay and in Ghana. At the same time, she's, we're growing so much here that we have to keep increasing taxes. And it's true, Loudoun County is going through a growth phase. You are proposing to keep taxes down. How are you going to do that? How are you going to accommodate the obvious growth that's going on in Loudoun County and the increase in costs and expenses and still keep a handle on, if not decrease, property taxes?
That's a great question. I want to reduce taxes, but before we can reduce them, we have to take a very close look at this zoning ordinance rewrite that the county is pushing through. The zoning ordinance rewrite is going to kill business in Loudoun County. It's going to halt business, and the message is going to be sent to the business community that Loudoun is closed for business. If the business community does not invest in Loudoun County, taxes can't go down. So it is absolutely imperative that we address this and make sure that this is not pushed through, especially not in a potentially lame duck session of the Board of Supervisors in December, that this zoning ordinance rewrite pass through and that then businesses decide, we're no longer going to invest. The first, most immediate piece of this, aside from our aspirations to get to phase out the car tax and to lower real estate taxes, is that we must make sure that we are making Loudoun County a place that businesses want to continue to invest in, while also being mindful of resident concerns and keeping our idyllic landscapes and all of the environment and culture that makes Loudoun County what it is.
One last question. Phyllis Randall, the woman you're trying to replace, as well as Julie Briskman, they were spearheading this move to create a Loudoun County Police Department because, well, they don't like the fact that Sheriff Mike Chapman is actually elected by the people. Should you be elected, they will not back down. They are relentless. They will bring this up again. They want control. They don't like an independent sheriff. Where do you stand on this issue?
I want an independent sheriff. Absolutely, undeniably, 100%. The most accountable that law enforcement can be to the people is when they are directly accountable to the people. And that's why we see lower crime rates under Sheriff Chapman than in other areas. We should absolutely not have a politically controlled police department. What we need is an independent police department, give people a choice, and allow for people to voice in on who they want managing law enforcement in the county. All
right, Gary Katz, he's now the Republican nominee for the chair-at-large for Loudoun County Board of Supervisors. Give us your website real fast, Mr. Katz.
Website is katzforchair, Katz for chair.com.
Thank you, Gary Katz. We'll talk to you again. Thanks for joining us. It's 7:45.